Governor General had the right to say no. The Governor General said yes to the Prime Minister. And because Tom doesn't like what the Governor General said, suddenly it's a constitutional problem. The Governor General did not say what Tom Freda believes should be done. Therefore, our system is at fault. Maybe the Governor General was right and Tom Freda is wrong. That never enters Tom Freda's mind. If Tom Freda doesn't get what Tom Freda wants from the Governor General is a mere cipher. The Prime Minister, most sessions from up until 1967, only 5 sessions of the first 125 sessions of Parliament in Canada lasted more than a year. Since then, they've been about evenly split. This session lasted a year. I don't know whether the Prime Minister's motives may have been the most base political motives, but the session lasted almost a year. He went to the Governor General and asked for it to be prorogued. That's well within normal procedures. An appointed president who had the same system probably would have said that, yes, he had the right to ask for the dissolution and the prorogation. Because Tom didn't like the prorogation, it's a failing of our Constitution. Well, damn it, Tom, you're going to be disappointed throughout your life because most things you want, most things I want don't happen. And that's nothing to do with a constitutional problem. It's politics, Tom. It's called politics and democracy. The things you say you believe in. But if you don't get what you want, there's no democracy.
Isn't the monarchy supposed to be above politics?
Exactly.
Then
this was your objection is politics. The Governor General looked at it constitutionally. Did the Prime Minister have the right to ask that? And there was nothing unconstitutional with the Prime Minister's request.
You spoke to the Governor General?
Well, obviously she said yes. If there was a constitutional reason, she would have said no. She's not there to decide whether it's politically wise or not.
I'm sorry, gentlemen. I'm going to have to cut it off there. Now, at this point, I would like to ask a question to my sovereign, the CFI. We're at about the 90-minute mark, and I know you wanted to limit about that point. Would you like to take the last 2 questions or move into opening statement, closing statements?
Just these 2 and then no more.
Last 2 questions? Okay. Thank you very much. Proceed.
Thank you. I find it interesting that 2 white men are arguing about their birthright and citizenship. And the conversation has been extraordinarily limited to that setting. And in fact, of course, Canada contains a growing number of people who fought, in some cases, very hard to get their Canadian citizenship and weren't born to it. As well, there was a great deal of people living in North America when a monarch decided to send his citizens over here to settle it and displace all those people. So I guess my question would probably center around the First Nations community. They have a long tradition of negotiating only with the head of state or the representative democratically elected in Canada, and will not negotiate with lower levels of government in most cases, if not all. So I'm wondering how, and this I guess is for Tom to begin with, how would a Republican Canada treat and negotiate with its First Nations communities and honor its monarchically derived treaty obligations?
All of our treaty obligations have been, that were established when we were a colony, have been inherited by the Canadian state, commonly referred to as the Crown. When First Nations undertake any kind of debate or discussion with the Crown, they are discussing it with the Canadian state. I know in the past there have been several times that the First Nations community have personally lobbied the Queen herself, but the Queen, if she's doing what she's supposed to do, will just forward the request back to Canada. The Queen has no power in Canada. All of the duties and responsibilities of the monarchy are now in the hands of the Governor General. The First Nations communities, the obligations that Canada has with the First Nations communities are all between Canada and the First Nations, not with the Queen. The Queen is a person, the Crown is the Canadian state.
Thank you. Garry.
I'm glad you raised the question of the Aboriginal, the First Nation people, because the governmental system tradition of most First Nations in Canada is a monarchical one, of hereditary chiefs and some form of consensus decision making. And it was interesting in many parts of Canada when the Indian Act was changed to allow Indian peoples, and particularly in Western Canada, to choose their form of Aboriginal government. They restored some role for the hereditary chiefs. So the idea that monarchy is somehow, as I suggested earlier, North American, republicanism is North American, the Aboriginal people are monarchical people. And they also feel that way towards the Queen of Canada. I know the chief of the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte sits on the same board as me of the Royal Heritage Trust, and the Mohawk people have a very profound relationship, not just with the Crown as an institution, but with the Queen as a person and the Crown as an institution. So they have been badly let down by Canadians on many occasions, but they see that as a misapplication of the power and the treaties they have with the Queen. There's a principle in Canadian law that the Crown can do no wrong. And as lawyers have pointed out to me, that also means the Crown can countenance no wrong. So that wrong is often done. And the Crown has least worked to restore that. And the Aboriginal people of Canada are among the most monarchical people in Canada. So I think they see that distinction and that point. And I should point out that the American Revolution, one of the main causes, which was cited by the American rebels, why they needed a revolution and a republic, was because the Crown granted Aboriginal rights and was going to protect Aboriginal people from the American colonists. And they cited that as a reason why they had to have a republic, because the king at that time, the Crown, was protecting the Aboriginal people. So there is a historical as well as a philosophical reason why Aboriginal people are a monarchical people and support the Crown without diminishing their grievances. I mean, the chief of the Mohawks, who's a friend of mine, he makes that point quite clearly. He's a monarchist, but he also recognizes he wants his rights.
I would point out too that the last time troops were called out was Oka and Conestoga, not in the October crisis. Much more recently.
That's quite correct. That's quite correct.
Tom's asked to borrow 30 seconds from his next question as well, so proceed.
I would very quickly disagree with the fact that the First Nations are inherently monarchical people. The Confederacy of the Iroquois, Six Nations, was the impetus or the inspiration for the American Constitution. And the Iroquois are quite proud of that. And the last I heard, the United States was a republic.
Correction there, the Americans borrowed the federal concept from the Iroquois. The Iroquois Confederacy is a constitutional monarchy. They have their hereditary chiefs and their consensus decisions. They have elected chiefs at the lower level. They have hereditary chiefs in the Mohawk. Sorry, learn about Mohawk history.
No, I'll disagree with that.
Thanks, Tom. I think we're going to take our last question.
I actually kind of going to forfeit what was going to be my original question, because no one ever came back to the issue of the ties between the monarchy and the Church of England. And I was wondering regarding this idea that the head of state has to be a member of the Church of England. Do you just say, are you in favor of reform of that? Do you just say, well, that's a birthright, leave it at that? And kind of related to that is the issue now in Britain regarding the appointment of bishops to the House of Lords. How do you see that? Well, I guess it goes to both of you.
In the Canadian context, it's legally it's an irrelevancy, but it has an impact because of the point of a shared monarchy, or shared monarch. That in the United Kingdom, the reason, it's not a matter of a particular religious denomination. I think we have to be clear about that. The point in the United Kingdom is that the monarch has to be a communicant in the state church, which is the Church of England. And Tom was quoting the coronation oath. What he failed to quote, that the coronation oath was changed after the Dominions gained full independence with the Statute of Westminster in 1931, so that the references to the Protestant Reformed religion is only reference to England, and that's made clear in the coronation oath. So in the context of Canada, I'm not sure that it even legally applies. because there is no Church of England in Canada. It doesn't say that the monarch has to be an Anglican. It has to be a communicant with the Church of England. The Church of England doesn't exist in Canada, and there is no state church in Canada. When the title Defender of the Faith was readopted for Canadian use in 1953, the government and Parliament made it clear that Defender of the Faith in Canada does not mean Defender of the Church of England or Defender of Christianity, that it means Defender of Faith in a broad, non-denominational sense. And so that was made clear in 1953. So if you're asking me in the Canadian context, I would like to see it dropped. It constitutionally requires an amendment of our Constitution, plus in conjunction